There is a team that I have seen before that do their daily stand-ups asynchronously. They were not my team. They were another team in the same kind of program, kind of realm with me. But I wanted to have a podcast where we talked about asynchronous daily scrums.
Yeah, definitely.
Or stand-ups. I mean, you can, whatever you want to call it.
You don't actually know if people are standing up, especially async. But yes, let's talk about.
If I'm remote at home, I'm sitting down. I'm letting you know.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk about why would a team want to do asynchronous daily stand-ups or.
That's a good question.
Why would they want to do that?
Well, one is the time suck of a daily stand-up, right? It's supposed to be 15 minutes by the book, but there's a lot of organizations out there that are having to deal with daily stand-ups that are going 30 minutes long. People are showing up late. They're not really vested in it. And so as a result, there's also the deja vu aspect of it, right? It's how the daily stand-up or Scrum becomes a rinse and repeat conversation, very monotone in delivery. Some folks show up with a list and they're just rattling off, blah, blah, point, done. I'm done. It's like they're wrestling a cow or something and tied them up and they're done. And wait, can you go back? What was that second thing you said again? So they're not really taking it serious. It's just a laundry list of stuff they did. They're a status report.
Yeah.
Those are two items. Got a couple other we can pull out.
Those are good ones, right? I mean, one other one might be because everybody's in a different time zone. Not everybody, literally, but you got team members in disparate time zones. And it's very difficult to find the right time when the teams can meet.
Right.
So that might be
my now is not your now. Sorry to talk over you. My now is not your now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What are some of your other ones?
Black hole, right? What comes out of us? What comes out of a stand-up?
Well, yeah. I mean, but okay, we can talk more about that. That can happen whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. It's not run well, right? So yeah, you're right though. Oftentimes it becomes one of those things that I'm in my flow, I'm in my groove, and I've now got to go spend 15 minutes on this thing. So I'm just going to tell people what I did, what I plan to do, and just keep quiet. I don't want people to tell me they need help from me.
That's an important point, right? You're in your flow. So the best 9 o'clock stand up. Let's just set, for example, it's a 9 o'clock stand up. I'm working from home. I roll out of bed. Let's get up and get started. I'm 7 o'clock. I'm starting my work, right? And I get into my flow. I'm getting stuff done. I'm moving along, and all of a sudden I got to break my train of thought, my flow, my productivity, just to go stand up with some other folks to give a status report. Well, I'm already halfway through my day in some respects, right? I got a lot of my stuff done already.
Right.
It's an enforced break for you.
Correct.
And like it is for some others too, right? On the team potentially.
But it's hard to get back in flow.
Yes, it is. So there is that disruption cost, right, so to speak. Okay, so what about others? Do you have others before we get into like how does that work in practice?
So I'll say that one. Solutioning. A lot of times in daily stand-up, you end up with a solutioning situation. Back to that extending the time. People are wanting to say, "Hey, I ran into this. Can you help me with this?" And it turns into a problem-solving meeting for the folks who are there, and someone doesn't necessarily stand up and say, "Hey, can you take that offline?" Or they let it just continue to go.
In which case it drives up to be like a 30-minute meeting, and then people just say, "This is what we do." So every meeting's a 30-minute meeting before long.
And they're checking out, and so the folks who aren't part of that conversation, that sidebar, are checking out, and they're starting to do other things. You can hear the keyboards going, and so there's that general sense of where's the value? What are you getting out of it? And the last one I would say for last was the source of extra work, right? We're all in the stand-up, and somebody goes, "Hey, I couldn't get this done. Can you help me? I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you." I've
already planned my day. I'm going to do all these things, and now you want me to do that too?
Yeah.
That's definitely real.
So I think those are some of the sometimes manager centric, right? The check in with the boss.
Yeah, I was gonna say you didn't mention that one. If we're digging into all of the anti patterns or whatever you want to call them, all of the reasons against, it's the opportunity in the day for my manager to come browbeat the team into whatever the fire of the day is.
Seriously though.
It's on the calendar. I could just show up, right?
You can show up as long as you don't speak up.
Well, I mean,
I have some rules around that.
We threw out so many things that I would never allow in the daily Scrum. So I think
we need to unpack. I mean, so those are some of the great reasons I think, right? Why you'd want to pursue asynchronous daily stand-up.
Let's caveat though. Let's make sure that we at least acknowledge that, because you were saying you wouldn't allow. Let's caveat that there's many organizations out there that actually have mature teams who are doing it correctly, doing it right, doing it best for their organization, their situation. These are common things you see that are disruptive from you becoming a mature team. So I want to make sure that we're not trying to say everyone's doing it wrong. At least respect Brian's teams who's doing it right.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, there are teams that are landing it right. Absolutely.
Another thing that we might do here is we might talk about if you were going to do it this way, and if there is teams that are, I'm sure there are teams that are doing this with high performing
There's
teams.
tools, yeah.
If you were going to do it this way, how would you be successful? A little game here that we could play. Maybe we can time box in like 3 minutes. Just talk about like, here's all the things that I would want to consider it a success to be working async like this, you know?
Yeah, I think some of the things that you'd probably want to do are the same things that you'd do if you weren't async, right? Like, don't invite people that are extraneous to the team, right? Make sure that people focus. You could use techniques like save all the discussions, real deep diving discussions till the 16th minute, and then only those participants that are vested will hang on. Everybody else can leave.
Well, let's save that one. Let's save that category to the end of it. I want to start like this court case with my strongest evidence. That's what my lawyer training has taught me.
Exhibit 1.
Exhibit
A.
It should be the murder weapon, because otherwise, what are we doing here, right?
It should be the body.
The point.
Alleged.
I don't know how there's a murder weapon when there's no body, but I mean, hey, this is all theoretical. Also, for legally speaking, this never happened. So the
I'm not a lawyer either, so don't take this as legal advice.
That's right. If you pay me, you can take it as legal advice. Just please deposit $500 an hour.
Just realize the bar is not very high.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm only competing with lawyers here. The number one thing for me is if you're going to be async and you're going to put your updates in a document or a Slack channel or some other tool or whatever, okay. However, the point of this meeting is for the developers to talk to other developers and collaborate on the work that they're about to go into that day. Micro planning on a day-to-day level. And if you're doing async, I assume if you're asking to do asynchronous, I assume that this can't work like that.
Well, other than just having a running commentary of people's input in some channel somewhere. I'm going to do this today, blah, blah, blah. And then you expect every single person on the team to read that, which is where the overhead kicks in too, right?
I was processing that assertion. Sorry for my moment of silence there.
That's why I threw it out the way I threw it out.
You threw it. So async can still, you can still say, this is what I intend to do today. I can still tell the team what I intend to do today, what I've planned for the day. I can still have micro planning by posting it into a tool, a channel. So I'm going to start with the bias that I'm working from a channel in Slack or some other communication tool, Teams, that there's a channel that I'm putting my daily stand-up notes in by a certain time of day. If I choose to put my note in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's not due until 10 tomorrow morning, but I closed my day at 4 so that I can put my note in for tomorrow. When I get up and start my day, I'm already in flow tomorrow. I'm not worried about putting my async note in by 10. It's part of my daily closeout, not part of my daily start. So from a productivity hack, I'm telling you what I'm doing today, yesterday, as part of my closeout, because I'm ending my day. This is what I didn't finish. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow. This is what I just finished. And it's fresh in my mind because I just did today. This is what I plan to do tomorrow. I'm not trying to remember tomorrow morning at 10 after I worked 2 hours today, 3 hours today, and remember what I did yesterday and not mix the two up. This is what I did today. This is what I'm doing tomorrow. If we're playing the 3 questions. So that's the other question.
I haven't pushed back on that this whole time because, again, we probably should have bounded this whole podcast.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is I don't know how useful the whole podcast would be if we bounded it by the way that I wanted, the borders I wanted to put on this podcast. When I thought about the topic, the borders I wanted to put on it were, you've got to be appearing or mobbing or something like that. You've got to be doing some kind of extreme programming, some sort of practice. So we already eliminated 95%.
Exactly.
I mean, and then
you did that when you said extreme programming, not even practice.
I know. And then on top of that, you've got to be walking the board, concentrating on work, not I did this, that, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. And then those last 5% of people are like, all right, dude, see you later. I'll see you in the next podcast. Like, feel free to skip this podcast. So the problem with this whole conversation is it's all gummed up in the anti-patterns of people's normal daily scrums.
I wonder if I can interject. So let's use how one of your teams, or examples using all your teams and then merge it into one, how they are doing their stand-ups and the sentiment of whether they enjoy their stand-ups or not. So rather than say it's an anti-pattern, do your teams enjoy doing stand-ups?
My team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
All right. So what are the things that they are doing that allow them to enjoy it? Because there are a large portion of folks out there that see it as just another meeting, not productive, a waste of time. So let's help those people who are not having good, productive, valuable stand-ups. And then we can get more into the async tools on how we can do that. But let's start with the perception of what is good And what is that? What's that measure look like for you?
Well, first is you don't do this is what I did yesterday and this is what I'm doing tomorrow,
Right.
whatever. Like yesterday, I tried to advance this issue, but I was blocked because I couldn't figure out how to work with this database, and I'm waiting on the database team to approve my ticket. And today, hopefully, the database team is going to approve my ticket, so I'm going to go grab another ticket while I'm waiting on the database team. And then tomorrow, hopefully the ticket will be unblocked and I'll be able to work on it. And if not, then I'll get this thing done and I'll look through any PRs that are open. No blockers.
I heard a status report right there.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
That's most teams. What I just did is most teams.
Indeed.
Wait, one other one is, and ticket 393 is done.
Yeah, right.
What was ticket 393? I
No
don't know.
context. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Work item 12845 is done.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's one thing I see. The other thing I see is, and this is coming from an individualistic perspective, where a developer could say, I'm done with story XYZ, QA, you can take it now. That's the time you get to talk to the QA people in the room at that point, because you were done before. You've just been sitting on something. So yeah, that's another thing we see all the time too.
Oh boy, listen,
Dude, I think we're just gonna go through the anti-patterns.
I was just gonna say, we're in the middle of this Async podcast, and I'm on the fence about trashing the whole thing. How long have we been recording? 60 minutes? I'm on the fence about trashing the whole thing and restarting the whole podcast on build me a terrible stand-up, and we'll all build the terrible stand-up and agree on it. And we'll the stand-up that we don't want to have, and then we'll create the opposite of that.
Well, that was the first draft. I mean, we can start over.
Well,
I don't mind. I don't
I don't know
mind.
if I want to.
But if we do start over, let's start with, all right, we're making the assumption that this is a good stand-up. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. This is the behaviors of our developers, everyone in attendance of the stand-up. This is what we expect to be good. Then from there, this is how we would employ async to do it. Yeah. However, we could be done in 5 minutes if we do that. So you got to be careful that we don't lose some of that anti-pattern conversation to get to good. So
Yes.
back to why do we need async is we have to lay what's the problem with synchronous.
Yeah.
So maybe we haven't done a good job of that. We've talked about the anti-patterns of stand-up, but the things that's wrong with synchronous.
Well, I don't think so. Here's my problem of where I already see us heading to. I'm on top of the train.
stand-up, yeah.
I'm on top of the train. I'm looking down the tracks, and I can already see we're heading for this train wreck that we're not gonna avoid. The train wreck is gonna be Brian anchoring on. I don't believe you can asynchronously do collaboration. You might have one or two people that are really good at working together. I see this as Scrum gangs, or what was it called? Scrum cliques.
So your team doesn't use Slack.
Yeah, my team uses Slack all the time.
Okay, so are they not collaborating asynchronously over Slack? Because someone posted a message, and until they respond to that message, it's out there asynchronously. The response is the collaboration. So by having a stand-up channel, it's the same thing as having a point-to-point DM. It's just in the group where you're sharing what was done. And it's collaboration when someone responds to the message. If I close out at 4 o'clock and someone responds to me at 4 o'clock at 4:05, but I closed out my day, I respond to it when I show up in the morning at 7. And if they don't show up until 9, they don't respond to it until 9. That's the same thing that happens on Slack right now. That's collaboration in today's standards.
It is, but also at the same time, it's not replacing this, hey, tap you on the shoulder and say, can you take a look at this?
But when Brian comes in at 9, 10:30, whatever time he shows up, he can look at the he can look
That's
at
early for him.
he can look at the channel, immediately read up on what's already been posted, even though it's not the due time yet. So you actually you've got a pre-read of many people's stand-up items.
It's not for me though. Again, why I say we're not getting over this train wreck is because we can argue about this all day. The messages over Slack is not going to that's not emergent architecture. They're not going to figure out table design and stuff like that over Slack. They're going to have to get together and talk about it.
They're not going to figure out table design over a stand-up either.
Sure they will.
That's solutioning.
Sure they will.
They can stay after the,
But once they stay after, that's not stand-up anymore.
No, that's true.
Doesn't matter. The problem was raised as I need help with this.
Right.
I think where it could work here is maybe if developers had the equivalent of office hours. We're gonna have it was exactly one company that worked like this, but if you had a little tool where you could put yourself in a virtual room, and then anyone that was in that virtual room anyone in that virtual room would immediately you were just on camera in the it's as a product manager, I like to have office hours where I'm just sitting in a room by myself. Although for some reason Google is hey, I see you're in here by yourself. You want me to time out your session? I'm why are you doing that, Google? Clearly, I hit the button to be in a meeting. Why are you second guessing me? Who built these features? I don't need these features. Anyway, This is my rant on Google. But no, like if it was something like that where like the developers had office hours and it's like, oh well, we have overlapping time where the developers are quote sitting together or sitting in an area or whatever, where they can bring whatever they need when they need help. They can bring it to the group and they know that it's open. They can just walk into the room when we were working together in office. But when it's asynchronous, like it's not even accessible at that point.
Yeah, tools like that tool you mentioned, those tools are excellent because they're visual, they're real time. It's great, assuming the other person's logged in and looking at it, which is where I think we come back full circle to async, because that other person on the other side of the world maybe is not looking at it right now. Then what happens?
So, but the team agreement is stand-up is at 10 o'clock. The team agreement with Async is everyone has read the stand-up channel by 10 o'clock or at 10 o'clock to make sure they've got all the recent updates. So you have an agreement that everyone is reviewing that channel and is accountable for what's in there. Whether they're standing in a room or not is really the difference we're talking about here. Whether they're on a video call or they have reviewed the channel, it's the same. It should be the same information. And in the situation where you're saying I need to do table design collaboration, if I posted mine early enough because I needed help, I knew I needed help, there's actually a good chance I'm going to get help before stand up. And we've already resolved it by the time we got to the 10 o'clock meeting. Yeah. So there's a benefit there.
Yeah, but again, like the early people will jump on and help you, the early person. And now, again, that's the click. Reduction of interruptions should be a benefit of this. That's like you're going to call it a benefit. It's like, well, if I have async, I have less meetings in my day because Lord forbid we have meetings with business people, which by the way, if we're arguing Agile right now, like this whole line of conversation will not fly with management. They'll be like, oh, you don't like meetings? Well, maybe we can get an employee who likes meetings. And then that'll be the end of that conversation. And I like, oh, Brian, you sound like a manager I don't want to work for or whatever right now. You sound like that's an old school mentality. Like, I'll tell you what, maybe it is, but like the majority of your management thinks this way. They think, well, it sounds like you're trying not to come to your stand-up meeting. It sounds like you're trying not to be accountable. Because what I see is the early people. Since you jump on at 7, I see the other 2 members of your team who start at whatever. Maybe somebody else starts at 7. Maybe somebody else starts at 8. I see you guys doing all the design and knocking out all the design for the tickets and picking up tickets first. And I see the rest of these people that log on at 10 later, in the day, seem like they're not picking up slack. They seem like they're not picking up the extra work. They seem like they're slacking.
Wow.
That's what management will see.
So Johnny, who signs on at 10, is actually in California, and so it is 7 o'clock.
It's
so
to management, the perception will be the reality.
The management needs to hire people in the same time zone because don't disagree. There is that perception. There is the perception of time. My time isn't someone else's time. When you try to have a stand up with someone on the Pacific time, you run into real challenges with people on the East Coast going, I don't want a meeting at that time. So time zone is impacting our ability to schedule meetings effectively, and Async would help with that.
I could come along. I could come online with that. The program that I was on, where our product person was in California, probably a third of the development team, including the dev lead, was East Coast, my time, and then our developers were out of India. So, good luck finding a time for us all to meet. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Where everyone's fresh and ready to go. It's like it's either way too early for one person, the middle of the morning for another person, and the very, very, very end of the day for the other people. Mm-hmm. So every time was terrible. There was never a good time. So this would actually have been quite helpful to a team like that. Were they able to pull it together? I think if you do this, I think what we're driving to is if you do this async, you need to find a way to pull the collaboration that happens out of the face-to-face daily stand-up and create another opportunity for that to happen if it's needed. If we need to check in with each other, we have to create some kind of pull system that lets you invoke that face-to-face collaboration when you need it, as soon as you need it. If you can do that, I'm okay with this. I think we can do this.
I think one of the key things you miss in async is you don't see the body language, assuming that your people are on camera if you were doing, because you can see the frustrations. You can see if they're checking out, folding arms, leaning back, rolling eyes. You can see all of that. But with async, it's just text in the channel. You don't really see how they're feeling, right? You don't get a sense of that, which is detrimental, I feel. Like it's useful to be able to understand where the other person's coming from.
But I mean, if you really commit to async, let's really commit to async, right? Let's say that we don't have. I read a book. I can't remember what book it was. They said they rapidly expanded the organization, and I remember like all the business leaders or the leads. I don't remember exactly what it was. That basically they committed to having a 2-hour block in the middle of the day. So maybe it was like 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, something like that. They were all co-located. So it was anyway, maybe it's not a great example. The idea was they committed to an overlapping amount of time when no meetings were able to be scheduled, because they realized that they had grown the business so much. Everyone was at meetings all the time, that kind of stuff, and they just needed to clear a channel to have people just show up to the room whenever they wanted to talk about whatever needed to be talked about. And that was a strategy that they used. Like something like that for async, because you would need to put out on a Slack channel or something that's, I need help, or I'm picking this ticket up. And everybody knows when you first pick a ticket up, there's a bit of architecture, a little micro architecture that needs to be done. Like, hey, everyone, I'm picking this ticket up. And then that opens the window. You know what I mean? Some kind of like it automatically will open a room and it'll automatically flag and let everybody know that to jump in if possible. And if they can't, they can't, but whatever. You know, you can do all that async. If you have, I mean, you can do it even without tools. It's just requires a little more work.
I've seen teams that stand up ask for help, or team members in a team stand up ask for help and not get the help they requested. And then other team members, I didn't hear that. I didn't know that.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, so if it's in writing in an async channel that I asked for help, at least there's some backing for my request of this is what I asked for.
Yeah.
This is what I needed. So there is some documentation to help my concerns that I asked for help and no one helped me.
Right. Well, you're real early in the podcast where you were talking about the stand-up being a black hole, where you ask for stuff or whatever. I don't know. The Slack channel could just as easily turn into a black hole of, hey, I put something out and nobody responded.
People to respond, exactly. Yeah.
Or it got buried in everyone else's updates, quote updates, air quotes updates. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to talk about that. It's not such a great one. The accountability one's not such a great one either, to be honest, because most of the people that are holding your feet to the fire with that one have bad intentions in the first place. I'm just saying it's more difficult to get away from those types of folks if you're async, because now they have another reason to not trust you. Not that they need reasons to not trust you. Like, it's Tuesday. Oh no, I'm gonna not trust you.
It's no trust Tuesday.
Yeah.
What about team transparency, right? So the fact that an async channel has the conversation in it related to those items, there's actually some transparency that is just built in that way as well, that you don't necessarily see or get or have any documentation on from stand-ups.
I think there's two sides to that, honestly. I feel like there's visibility, right? People type stuff, and what they type, they will type very guardingly, if that's such a word.
Yep.
So the transparency piece gets diluted there, because they know, if I put this here, it's now there, captured in eternity in writing. So I'm just going to not say that right. I'm just going to allude to it, right? So transparency goes, I think, both ways there. People can say, well, there's visibility, sure. I mean, people can say things in there. They're not going to say what they really mean to say because of the fact that it's in writing and it could be used against them.
I agree with that one.
Yeah. I mean, even if like the daily scrum is supposed to be for the team, so I'm already worried that people are taking the stuff in that channel and what they're doing with it or whatever. But I like, the reality is, if you write it down, like the old HR thing, don't write down things that you don't expect HR to use against you eventually or whatever. But I don't know. There's so many bad practices and bad behaviors with this category. It's a much harder topic than I expected it to be to get through, because there's like we have to first wade through all of the bad stand-up behaviors, and now we have to wade through all of the bad business, the bad actor behaviors. And now we can talk about, well, how can we do this and actually be successful? So like maybe we just hotwire this conversation to get to the end of how could we do this and actually be successful? I've already thrown one thing out there that I think is a must, is I need a way to say that I'm planning to work on something. You can actually do this with the automation in your ALM tool. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But you could say the first time I pick up the work item, something triggers. Yeah. So maybe that is a way to say, okay, pick the work item up for the first time. I'm planning to work on it. We get together. We talk about what my plan is, if we've not detailed it out enough in sprint planning, assuming. But yeah, it's like teams that when they say they're about to pick up the work item, they come to the daily scrums, and it basically turns into a solutioning session. Those are teams that spend like 30 minutes on sprint planning and think that they can get away with 30 minutes on sprint planning, 4-week sprints. 30 minutes, like you got a full detailed plan with subtasks and like mini architecture kind of laid out and sketched out in 30 minutes. That's
What about the architect that's on multiple teams? Because now they have to go to the 9 o'clock meeting, they have to go to the 9:30 meeting, by the way, the team runs late, so that one's actually scheduled for 9:45 just in case, leave a buffer, right? And that meeting goes for 30 minutes, but we leave another 15-minute buffer on it. So the architect's gone for 2 hours for two 30-minute meetings.
I completely understand. And also, like, what does that architect really do all day? That would be what I question.
That might be a different podcast, though.
What does an architect do all day? That's like, what does the Scrum Master do all day? Yeah, I like it. That would be a fun podcast. So again, that's my request here is I need a way to pull, not push. I need a way to pull that I need to start a collaboration. You know what I mean? So something larger that I need. Basically, it's if I was coming to a daily Scrum in a room standing up with everyone, I would just say like, hey, I have a parking lot item. When we're done, I need to talk about, like, I'm starting with this work. I need to review the architecture with, the lead or another team member or whatever. Or, hey, I can use peering because we're going to be in a part of code that we're not familiar with or whatever today. So trying to set something up or whatever. So I need that mechanism. What else? What else do we need for this to be a success?
I think we need to replace somehow in the async model the behavior where a in-person team would come in, look at the board collectively and say, right, what's stopping us taking this item and moving it to its column to the left, right, to our right, right? Let's talk about that. Yeah. I'd rather have that conversation than, Fred, what did you do today? Mary, come on, right? It doesn't matter. I coded yesterday. I'm going to code some more today. Tomorrow, I plan to code some more. No, I have no blockers. Yep. Next, right? Instead of that, far better to look at the work and say, what's stopping us moving that forward? Who can help with this? That can happen. I feel that can happen most effectively in a synchronous way because everyone's focused on the same thing. Honestly, they can look at the same thing, but are they really focused on it? And how do you move that thing forward asynchronously? That's a challenge, I feel.
I agree.
Well,
I agree.
How would it be successful?
I'm sorry. I'm thinking about an experience I had where I had team members who were on multiple projects in a single stand-up, and they were all reporting on their project. And so there was no continuity in the conversation, and it just went on and on and on. But you couldn't break it up because there were multiple people who were on the same project, but on multiple projects together.
Yes.
And that was the most efficient way to not have 15 stand-ups with the same people going to all the stand-ups. And so that's an anti-pattern that understand what it is. But as you're describing the situation, I'm like, no, they're not always working on the same thing. But I realized, no, on that team, no, they weren't.
How can that be more effective is what you're asking,
and
right?
so in that case, those people who were on multiple teams would have multiple channels of async conversation that they would be able to report into and converse on without having to disrupt the folks who may only be on one project and not have to sit through that
for themselves. Isn't that a bit of a time waste too? Because now you've got to go digest multiple channels.
Keep your whether I'm doing a physical stand-up or I'm doing an async based on the organizational structure.
Yeah, it's a burden.
It's a burden either way. Yeah. Which is the lesser of the evils?
That's true. It is a burden either way. Yeah.
So if you have team members on multiple projects, which isn't ideal, but I do believe there's folks out there that are in there in this case that an async stand-up would help them. So thinking of the success side of this, having an async stand-up channel for people on multiple projects, multiple teams, affords them some freedom of updating, removing the need to be present somewhere else.
At the expense of removing the benefits of having a conversation.
I'm still struggling.
Not a threaded conversation, in real-time conversation.
But I'm still struggling with the fact that I have to be in the room to say I need to have a conversation with you, and me being able to connect with you via a channel somewhere else and still get the conversation.
You can have a conversation.
I'm struggling with the fact that I can't trigger a conversation any other way than being in a room with you. That's the premise I'm hearing.
No. It's not that. So here's the thing.
We're arguing Agile. I'm just taking a stance.
No, that's fine. Look, you want to have a conversation with Brian. You guys are in different time zones. And you could definitely mention him in a thread somewhere and so forth, right? Contrast that to the scenario where everybody's in the room together and you're talking and you raise your point. Everyone's also engaged. They hear you. That piece is missing in the other model because who's to say they're actually looking at the same thread, right? And understanding what you're asking him. Yeah. It's just being aware of what the teammates are doing. Yeah. Now, if everybody was doing their own work, that's fine. What you just said is fine because you're doing your work, you're talking to him. I'm least concerned because I'm doing my work and Mary and Jane, they're doing their worr. But we're a team.
But there's a good chance that
I can't. That the model. If there's one thing that comes out of this conversation that's my hot take on this is like the people who come to the stand up and is like, I'm working on my thing, just leave me alone, let me go in my dark corner and work by myself. Again, I've worked with too many people that are like that like resist collaboration. Hey, I don't need to explain what I'm doing, it'll be done soon, and I'll turn in my PR or whatever. Like, that doesn't help. You working on your work in a silo by yourself in the dark in a basement or whatever, number one, that's not collaboration. Number two, if Brian was an engineering lead, I would coach you to say, listen, you're not on a great track to like excel in engineering. Like, if you want to do what you're doing, exactly what you're doing forever and ever and ever for the rest of your career, that's fine. But if you don't have the ability to communicate and collaborate with other members of your team to help them understand why you're doing what you're doing, I'm really worried about. I mean, like, I guess, like, I don't know. Am I coloring this? Because, like, I'm looking at it from my attitude about I want the team to work together to increase a skill set, to try different things, to get challenged on the architecture, to think about the future, that kind of stuff. That's, you know what I mean, the engineering work. And you want someone looking over your shoulder. That's a good thing. Having your work looked at by somebody else is a good thing before it goes into production. For every one of person that says that, there's probably like a half a dozen people are like, just pound out the ticket and get back to work and just get like, hey, these developers, why are you even having a stand up? Why are you even having a stand up at all? Just give them their ticket and let them go work on it, and they'll come back to you and you can handle it. Like, isn't it more efficient to just have one person, to have the tech lead just distribute all the work like that? Now I've wandered out of this podcast, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a team. To me, that's a work group. That's
right.
Not a team.
When they start their work item, they say, this is what I'm about to plan, and they kind of bounce it off their team members, and maybe some of the more senior team members can suggest other ways of doing things, or maybe somebody can sit with them for a little while to kick them off, and then once they're off and running, maybe they're good or whatever. Like that working together to increase their skill set or increase the effectiveness of what they're doing, that is the stuff that I'm worried about losing. And also, like, if we're 8 people on a team and we're all just picking up work items and doing them and not talking to anybody else and not involving anyone else in our work, are we one team of 8 or are we 8 teams of 1?
So that's a bias I need to I'm hearing a bias that if I don't have a stand up, my team is not talking to each other. And I'm struggling with the fact that we're saying the only time the team is going to talk to each other is during a stand up. I would assume that the team would actually benefit from freeing up 30 minutes, 15 minutes off their calendar and possibly use that time to collaborate and communicate together and execute on what they need to execute on. The other thing I wanted to go back to was, Brian, hey, if you needed help from Brian, right? Well, if you need help from Brian, I might also need help from Brian. And Brian's back to back all day long, and his availability was 2 hours ago when his day started, not after 10 o'clock when his day's already underway. And so having earlier notification still helps the potential availability that team leads and product owners and scrum masters and those support roles that an individual developer may need. The availability component can be helped and mitigated by communicating early and often. But I have a problem. I'm really struggling with the idea that the stand-up is the only time we collaborate.
It may not be the only time, but it's the only time when everyone hears what someone's saying.
Okay, so let's pause there. So with an async, everything needs to be in by 10, everything needs to be in by 9, whatever the time zone is. I'm saying 10 for the Pacific folks, right? But if everything needs to be in by 10 and everyone reads the log at 10, and that's the working agreement, everyone's aware what's in there, then isn't that the same thing?
You can accomplish that mechanically. Yes, everybody must read that. The person who is reading that hasn't had an opportunity to ask a question, like they would have done if they were together in person, not in person, but synchronously.
So ideally, you would see a lot of activity at 10:05 on your daily stand-up channel if there's dialogue, communication needs to happen. And if I'm leading the team, I'm going to recognize no one's talking. There was a question asked. Now I know I should probably be prodding some folks.
Isn't that serializing things as opposed to having a real-time communication? Like, because you're right. At 10 o'clock, people ask questions, and then other people are. So the stand-up has gone now from a reading to responding and all of that. And it may even exceed 15 minutes, right? Potentially. I don't think it's as effective. Now, we were talking earlier before the podcast, using the possibility of some automation, bots, etc. That might help you there. And I don't know because I've never used any, but that sounds intriguing to me. Like in the async model, given that you have to be there, right? Can we use technology to help us?
Yeah, the bots ask questions like you can set them up at a certain time of day, ask how's it going? How are you doing? What are you working on? Things like, and all of a sudden those bot questions get quick responses and they get fed into the channels.
I'd like to try some of that out. Sounds good, especially if the bots can also do like sentiment, sensing and probing and Yeah, that'll be good. How are you feeling right now? Frustrated. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Right?
I worked at one organization that at the end of the week when we submitted our timesheets, I worked at two organizations actually. Second organization, I brought it with me. But the organization asked, "How do you feel about your work? How do you feel about your project? Right? How are you feeling? How you feel about your project?"
At the end of the week.
At the end of the week, when you submitted your timesheet, you could not submit your timesheet without 1 to 5 response on those 2 questions. And I actually was, as the project lead, one of my team members put a 2 for how he felt about what was going on, and I got called on it, and I responded to it like Brian would. And they made it my problem. Like, he's responding to the business issues we're having with the client relationship. So it did spark a conversation. So you could use those things as a way of collecting team sentiment of how folks are doing.
Sounds like an extension. It's useful. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like an extension of the Nico calendar, right?
It is.
There's value in that for sure. I don't know if that's a substitute for synchronous stand-up. Honestly, yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you have to have an asynchronous one, what are you trading off? Right? What trade-offs are you making? That's what we're talking about. I feel. I don't think we're saying asynchronous is the way to go, given no matter what, right? We're not saying that, I think.
No, we're definitely not saying that, because I've only been pushed further into the camp of, like, you can do everything that we just detailed about asynchronous. Cool, you can do that. And you also have a daily check-in. And you may say, I don't have anything to add in the daily check-in that I didn't already add asynchronous. That's fine. You don't have anything to add. But it is an additional checkpoint. It's 15 minutes. If it's going longer than 15 minutes, you have other problems. If you're asking 3 questions, you have other problems. If you're not walking the board and concentrating on the work, you have other problems. Again,
if you're on multiple projects.
It's an additional checkpoint. You should be doing all the rest of the stuff that we said in this podcast. Check Slack channels, checking in, on-demand, but I was going to say pull requests. That's not what it is. On-demand asking for help, you know what I mean? Constant communication with your team, that kind of stuff. Automated notifications and whatnot that are asynchronous all the time to let people know that things are changing, things are going out, whatever builds are happening, production release happening, whatever. Sometimes what I do in my day is I'll put stuff off because it's not worth the mental capacity to try to hold on to it, multitask or whatever, because I know that the stand-up is coming, and then I'll bring that to the stand-up. I'll have it like written down on a sticky, and it'll be completely out of my brain. And then when the stand-up happens, I'll say, oh, we were supposed to look at, did anybody look at this? We said yesterday we were supposed to look at this, and I said I would look at it if we could. I never made time for it. Did anyone happen to look at it or whatever? Because it's like something that was out of my brain because I was working on higher priority stuff, which legitimately was higher priority, but it's just my check-in, which I could do that async as well, but it's much faster, quicker, additional checkpoint, and all the async stuff is there. So
your responses are quicker because you're there asking, right? As opposed to the channel, you can ask, then you wait till somebody actually reads and responds, which could be sometime later. And not necessarily saying it's their fault. They're in a different time zone maybe. So it's just a disadvantage having this asynchronous mode of engagement, I feel.
Yeah.
I do think that there's value, though, in those tools because it can keep management out of your daily stand-ups, for example. They can be invited to those channels and they can consume those. So they're up to date now. They don't have to come to the daily stand-up and burden the team just because they have questions, right? So for those sorts of things, it can be useful.
Yeah. I think, so I'm still a fan of in-room daily stand-up, full disclosure, right?
Yeah.
These are tools I've started looking at, concepts I started thinking about, trying to figure out what the pros and cons of those tools are going to be. But the biggest win for me is when I have a time zone problem. It alleviates the time zone problem for me. The idea that I'm not stuck with someone in India sitting in their living room at 8 o'clock at night, someone trying to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, right? Just to make it convenient for me at 8, right? And so that's the time zone. I think it really comes down to the makeup of your team. It's situational of whether or not you're going to benefit from async or not, and all the anti-patterns that go into a stand-up. Those need to be corrected. So now we're talking about the maturity.
Yes.
Now we're talking about the maturity of the organization, maturity of the team, and where we're at in the digital transformation.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Those anti-patterns need to go whether you're async or not.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hopefully those of you that are real fans are still with us. And asynchronously. Yes. Let us know other topics that you'd like us to handle on this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and like down below.